Ladies and gentlemen, they saw you step through chaos and assumed it would consume you. They watched the smoke rise and whispered eulogies, thinking your story had ended. But they didn't understand. This wasn't your finale. It was your metamorphosis. Every ember on your skin was a symbol of survival. Each scar, a line in your blueprint. And now that you've emerged, unbent, unsilenced, and untouched by their doubt, they're starting to see the truth. You weren't created to entertain. You were born to endure, to eclipse, to outlast. Now their fantasies are unraveling because the truth hits different. It doesn't arrive with a parade. It arrives with presence. And you are no longer the easy target they dismissed. You're the force they never calculated. They wanted you to fit their mold, to be predictable, simple, controllable. Just another name, another figure lost in the noise. But instead you dismantled their model, broke their expectations. And from the rubble, you crafted a throne. They murmured behind your back, thinking your quiet was weakness. They mimicked your steps, thinking they'd reach your level. But you weren't walking their path. You were carving a new one entirely. While they followed trends, you bent time and space to your own rhythm. You weren't there to fit in. You were there to rewrite what fitting in even meant. They called you unhinged, because sanity doesn't scare anyone. But you did. You weren't bound by their tidy little stories. You were the glitch they couldn't debug, the storm they couldn't track. They tried to erase you, whispers, silence, doubt. But legends, they don't vanish. They echo. They breathe in the smoke and turn it into prophecy. And you've turned your bruises into battle hymns. Your silence, a strategy. Your name, a signal flare. They didn't see the grind, only the glow. They weren't there when the mirror was your only witness, when the shadows in your mind screamed louder than any critic, when defeat curled around your feet like a lover begging you to stay small. They weren't there when you bled with no crowd to clap. But they're here now, gaping, gasping, grasping at the fragments of your legend. They tried to kill your light. Now it blinds them. Your resilience makes them flinch. Your existence is a wound they can't stop poking. Because you didn't just survive, you became the storm. And now, your voice shakes the very foundations they thought were untouchable. They tried to outwit you with tricks, outshine you with filters, outpace you with noise. But they forgot. Greatness isn't loud, it's inevitable. While they boasted online, you built in silence. While they performed, you prepared. Now your presence is the phantom that haunts their feeds. Each post about you a confession, each share an apology, masked as awe. But it's too late. The shift already happened. The story has changed, and you're not ahead. You're unreachable. You didn't enter their game. You rewrote it. They laughed at your vision, mocked your steps. But every laugh was a sign of their fear. They sensed it. Something in you didn't belong. Something in you couldn't be tamed. You didn't panic when they turned their backs. You didn't shrink to fit their fiction. You expanded, relentlessly, unapologetically. And now they can't look away. They study you like a riddle, as if decoding your rhythm will give them back control. But you aren't a formula. You're the beautiful kind of chaos that rearranges the rules. They tried to pin you in place. But you weren't meant to be contained in their textbooks. You are the genre now. You've become the reference point they didn't prepare for. Now they speak your name with reverence, even as they choke on their pride. They raise white flags where they once raised walls. But you don't forgive. You evolve. You ascend. Their regret echoes louder than their hate ever did. They thought you'd burn out, But you used that fire like fuel. You sharpened their mockery into weapons. You turned betrayal into your battle cry. And when the time came, you didn't scream. You struck with purpose, precision, power. Now they sit in disbelief, mouths open, asking, how? How did you rise? Simple. You didn't follow rules. You forged reality. You weren't a trend. They thought you'd fade. But your name is carved in places their fingers can't reach. You rose in silence, with no cheerleaders, no shortcuts. And now they ache, not because you made it, because you made it without them. They didn't think they needed you. Now they study you. Whisper your story like folklore. They missed it, the spark, the shift, the revolution, because they were too busy watching the wrong things. You weren't stalling. You were building a storm, a statement, a legacy. One so wild, it made their carefully crafted world feel like a prison. And now you've outgrown it. The joke is on them. They lit the fuse the moment they laughed, and now they live in the explosion. You became the moment they thought would never arrive. You orchestrated a revolution while they updated their profiles. You didn't demand attention. You moved with ghost-like precision, and when the fire cleared, there you were, not broken, not begging, beckoning. They thought greatness wore crowns, but greatness wears scars. It moves in silence, and you bled behind the curtain. You learned patience where they craved praise. You practiced mastery while they scrolled for meaning. And when it was time, you didn't knock. You blew the doors off their hinges. Now they hide behind screens, pretending not to notice. But they do. You've cracked the comfort they built their world on. You didn't arrive to participate. You arrived to dismantle. They assumed you'd beg for their validation. But rejection was the gift. It made you bulletproof. They gave you silence. You gave them echoes. They gave you pain. You gave them history. Now your presence is their addiction. They can't mute you, can't scroll fast enough. You are in their algorithms, their memories, their nightmares. You didn't just rise. You redefined how to rise. You kissed rock bottom like it was holy ground, turned it into a launch pad, and now they're stunned. Not because you succeeded, but because you didn't beg, didn't bend, didn't compromise. And that's what breaks them. You never asked for their yes. You only needed their underestimation. They used to laugh. Now they journal. They try to unpack what they witnessed, how someone they dismissed became someone they can't escape. You shattered their concept of power, of worth, of destiny, because they weren't the main character. You were. While they searched for spotlights, you became the light. You're not just seen, you're felt. And that feeling? It terrifies them, because you're not slowing down. They talk like historians now, trying to curate your story. But their timelines can't contain your truth. You didn't fit the mold. You melted it. You rewrote the rules, invented a new kind of ambition, one that doesn't ask, one that commands. You weren't supposed to make it, but you did. And not just anywhere, through places they'd never survive. You walk now with the confidence of a storm that knows where it's going. They feel it in their pulse, in their fading relevance, in their quiet envy, and the cruel truth. You were never trying to beat them. They weren't your competition. They were the crowd. You were the spectacle. They watched. You created. They assumed your silence was defeat. But it was design. They didn't know you were gathering everything they wasted, time, rejection, pain, and crafting an empire from it. What they thought was your downfall was your blueprint. Every no, a brick, every insult a tool. Now their world is breaking. Not because you attacked, but because your existence rewrote the script. They don't understand the game anymore. You flipped the board, walked off, and started building something they can't enter. They didn't lose to you. They lost to the version of you they never bothered to imagine. They see it now. The control they clung to, gone. The ego they fed, starved. Their illusions, shattered. And the wildest part? You were never trying to outdo them. You were becoming someone they'd never comprehend. While they chased validation, you pursued purpose. Their fear wasn't envy, it was awareness. Somewhere deep inside, they knew. If even a piece of what you carried ever fully awakened, they wouldn't survive your shadow. And now, they don't. Because you didn't wait for the spotlight. You became the light. And no filter, no platform, no algorithm can contain the radiance of someone who rose from ashes without applause. They played their games in public. You designed the future in private. And the outcome? Inevitable. You're not a moment. You're a movement. Not a post, a prophecy. And they were never part of the plan. Just the proof that you never needed permission. Only pressure. And now, you're just getting started.